In October 2015, 6 weeks after Tony Abbott was deposed as Australia's Prime Minister in a fit of inter-party backstabbing, he arrived in London to give the Margaret Thatcher Memorial Lecture at Guildhall. Standing before an audience of Conservative Party luminaries, he praised the Iron Lady before launching into a spirited defence of Australia's controversial immigration policy. According to Abbott, his government's harsh measures, forcibly turning around refugee boats to prevent them landing, and sending asylum seekers to detention camps on remote Pacific islands, had ended the arrival of unwanted migrants in Australia. After a summer when more than 1 million asylum seekers had streamed into Europe, Abbott lectured the assembled Tories about the perils of loving one's neighbour as oneself, calling it a wholesome instinct that is leading much of Europe into catastrophic error. Due to misguided altruism, Europe was weakening itself, argued Abbott, and the only way to reverse the tide, he insisted, was emulating Australia's policy. Whether those turned away died in another country's waters or back in the countries they initially fled did not figure in his equation. By removing images of boats capsizing off Australia's shores from local television and ensuring that more migrants seeking asylum did not arrive in the country, his work was done. Nor was he bothered by the fact that the offshore camps in Nauru and Papua New Guinea were still operating at a cost of billions of dollars. The core of Abbott's argument was that refugees seeking asylum were simply trying to cheat the system by traveling to wealthier Western countries. In Europe, as with Australia, he said, people claiming asylum invariably have crossed not one border but many, and are no longer fleeing in fear but are contracting in hope with people smugglers. However desperate, almost by definition, they are economic migrants, even though many asylum seekers arriving in Europe and Australia have passed through countries that are unsafe or do not offer asylum because they are not party to the UN Refugee Convention. Our moral obligation is to receive people fleeing for their lives. It's not to provide permanent residency to anyone and everyone who would rather live in a prosperous Western country, said Abbott. He denounced the EU and NATO rescue missions in the Mediterranean as too kind. For Abbott, rescuing migrants on capsizing boats was a facilitator for migration rather than a deterrent.